hosted and produced by Josh Kangley. Josh is back in this season as he dives into Chance Englebert's case to keep the light on.
I want people to know that he was a great person, because he was a great person. He deserved the world, and he could have been so much. But I really want everybody to know that no matter what they've ever heard about him negatively, probably isn't the truth, because that kid didn't have a mean bone in his body. He would have done anything for anybody. He would have gave the shirt off his back for somebody he didn't know if they needed it more than he did. And that's not how they've ever portrayed him. But that is who he is.
This is Nebraska's Missing Persons Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Kangley, and in this season, we are on a mission to highlight one of these cases, the disappearance of Chance Englebert. To learn more about the events surrounding his disappearance, to explore Chance's life, and to keep a light on for him. This is Season 2, Chance Englebert.
And matching up with the time on the videos, he is able to cover a lot of ground pretty quickly, which also questions how much did he have to drink? Because through my experience, seeing people and interacting with people that had a lot to drink, they're not covering a lot of ground quickly, and they don't know exactly where they're going. And he appeared to know exactly where he wanted to go, which was he wanted to go home to Moorcroft, to his house in Moorcroft.
That was private investigator Ryan, who has been working Chance's case. And you'll be hearing more from him in this episode. In the previous 2 episodes, I answered some questions and laid some groundwork as to how I came about doing Chance's story. In this episode, Chapter 1, Rider in the Storm, we will discuss the overall timeline and events leading up to Chance's disappearance and get some insights from Ryan, the private investigator. At the time of his disappearance, Chance was 25 years old, married to his wife, Bailey, and they recently had a son. Chance had just gotten a new job after being laid off from the mine, along with hundreds of other employees, after a major layoff. He was excited about this new job. Chance and Bailey lived in Moorcroft, Wyoming, and were visiting Bailey's family in Gering, Nebraska during the 4th of July week. On Saturday, July 6, 2019, Chance and his in-laws spend the day golfing and by all counts are having a great time. And everything was going great that day until something abruptly changed and made Chance upset. Bailey goes to pick Chance up from the golf course, and when they get back to Bailey's grandparents', where they had been staying that week, Chance gets out of the car and walks off. Hours later, a storm would come, and Chance would never be seen again. Here now is Chapter 1, Rider in the Storm. I wanted to establish a known timeline right off the bat to lay out the facts and circumstances of the case. And to do so, I spoke with the private investigator working on Chance's case, Ryan, with RD Investigations, who has over 20 years of law enforcement experience, with over 6 of those years working on complex investigations, specializing in people who don't want to be found. So Ryan brings a lot of experience to this case, and he has the kind of approach I believe is necessary.
So my name's Ryan. My investigative unit is RD Investigations. My history is on the West Coast. I was in law enforcement for almost 22 years. 6 to almost 7 years of that was investigations, complex investigations, gang investigations, financial crimes, homicides, officer-involved shootings. But one of the things I felt like I specialized in was with my narcotic investigations was trying to find people who didn't want to be found. My specialty was prison investigation or prison crimes. And when we had narcotics, controlled substance being smuggled into our institutions, sometimes we just had an alias or sometimes just a barcode or a stamp to find out who was trying to send in large amounts of narcotics and trying to locate that person and stop them and possibly prosecute them for what they were doing. Really learned the out of the box thinking on how to do that. So coming into Chance's case, I was doing some side work for Discovery Investigations, got to know them really well. Discovery Investigations located out of Rapid City, South Dakota. And about 6, 7 months doing some side work for them, they brought up Chance's case to me. I had never heard of Chance Leslie Englebert or anything involving his disappearance. I was actually new to the area, and they wanted me to look at a case file from the previous private investigator. He had passed away during COVID, and he had a case file and a desktop computer with a bunch of files in it. So I spent a week and I went over the case file and I looked at the tower and looked through some of the stuff he had saved on there. And I realized that there might have been some interviews and some follow-up that the former private investigator wanted to do, but never able to accomplish. So I asked Discovery Investigations if I could go ahead and take over the case from them and do some follow-up. They were very happy about it. The only thing they wanted was Chance's mother, Dawn. They wanted her blessing on it. So I went ahead and got a hold of Dawn and met with her and asked her if it was okay if I worked on her son's disappearance. So she agreed to it. And I've been working on Chance's disappearance going on over a year and a half now.
Ryan mentioned the previous private investigator had some unfinished work. So I asked him more about this and if he was able to kind of pick up where he left off or able to pursue any of those leads.
I have. So there was, I want to say there was about four, I wouldn't call them credible, but four main theories on what happened to Chance and a bunch of interviews, names written down, interviews that had not been completed yet. So yeah, I started with the first theory on what might have happened to Chance and started working on those interviews. And I think to date, I probably have well over 50 interviews completed.
To get a better understanding of the place we're talking about, I asked him about Gering, Nebraska and the surrounding area to help paint a picture for us.
So you have three towns, or one city and two towns, into like a little tri-city area. Of course, you have the main city, which is Scottsbluff. I guess you could call them the big brother. And then you have Gering, which would be the little brother connected to Scottsbluff. And right in between them is Terrytown. Terrytown, I don't know if they're exactly an incorporated city or not. I do know that they contract out to Scottsbluff Police Department to patrol their area. Well, part of Gering, part of Scottsbluff, so it's a little combination of the two. They are, even though they're getting up there in population, they still have that small town atmosphere. They do have some big city crime coming in, but the law enforcement's there real good about handling that and keeping their citizens safe. Just driving through there, it feels like to me, driving through a small farming or ranching community with the small ranch and farms around it. And then you have your bigger stores, box stores, Home Depot and Walmarts and stuff on the center of the city.
Next, we get into the timeline.
On Saturday morning, Chance went golfing with his brother-in-law and father-in-law. When I say brother-in-law, it would be his wife's sister's husband or long-term boyfriend at the time. And then father-in-law, so his wife's father, of course. They went golfing at a golf course about 20 to 30 minutes from Gering, Nebraska. And according to the videos and the photographs and some text messages that came from the golf outing, they were having a great time. Everybody was having a good time, excited. They got to get away from it all. There was a lot of alcohol purchased by everybody, and there was a lot of alcohol. There was alcohol consumed. To me, it wasn't a lot of alcohol, but just because of my prior military experience, I know a lot of alcohol can be consumed. With the three of them, they drank their fair share of alcohol and was having a great time. After the golf outing, they went back to the clubhouse and were sitting out on the porch, and father-in-law decided to take off a little early and he left, and it left brother-in-law and Chance having a conversation. During that conversation, something upset Chance. Don't know if it was something that the brother-in-law had stated to him. I don't know if it was a recent memory or a combination of everything plus his recent new employment because of his job loss with the mine shutting down that had triggered him to become upset.
Chance had just been laid off from the mine, along with several hundred others after a major layoff. Layoffs can be a difficult thing to go through, but Chance quickly got a new job. In fact, that very same day he was laid off, he already had another job lined up, and he was very excited about it. Here's Chance's mother, Dawn, describing Chance's excitement about his new job.
And then he got laid off with his job, but so did 600 other coal miners. He went and got a job the very same day that he got laid off. He got laid off on Monday. He had the job and everything done. He took his welding test and he took a drug test on Wednesday. And he was ready to start that day. And they're like, Chance, it's 4th of July. Go have fun. We'll see you on Monday. They were excited to have him and he was excited. And they just couldn't believe like how many kids would want to start that same day.
And here's Chance's Aunt Katie, who checked in with Chance to make sure he was okay. And he said he was all good.
I had talked to Chance just because of him losing his job. I reached out to him and said, hey, bud, just wanting to make sure you're okay. He sent me back, Aunt Katie, everything's good. I already have another job. I just sent back, hey, I'm proud of you. Love you. If you need anything, I'm here for you.
So it appears that Chance was handling this layoff well, and he was excited to start this new job when he returned from visiting his wife's family that week. Back to the timeline.
Whatever it happened to be, he messaged Bailey, his wife, and asked him to come get him pretty quickly. And in the middle of them hanging out and being together, Bailey showed up. And according to witnesses there, Chance yelled at Bailey. Don't know the exact words, but there was a conversation. It was heated. And they all got into her vehicle and drove away to head back to her grandparents' house. And that's where they were staying for their Independence Day week or weekend. They were staying at the grandparents' house. What comes into question is whether or not they actually made it all the way back to the grandparents' house. We do know, based on the timeline and Chance being seen on the videos, that he obviously either got out of the vehicle at the grandparents' house or close to the grandparents' house. And he got out and started walking. And then from there, according to the one witness that was there, which was Bailey, she stated that Chance was not patient and he wanted to go home ASAP. According to her, she wanted to go inside and pack, but we don't know if that's 100% accurate or not. But we do know he did get out of the vehicle and he started walking north, either on 10th Avenue or 7th Avenue. He started walking north.
Ryan mentioned something I hadn't heard before, though it is one of the things I've often wondered about this case. When Bailey picked up Chance from the golf course, did Chance wait until they got all the way home to the grandparents' home where they had been staying to get out of the car? Or did he get out of the car sooner? Not that it matters a whole lot. I just always question whether it made sense that Chance would wait all the way until he got to the grandparents' house. Either way, as Ryan said, if he got out at the grandparents' house or if he got out of the car before that, he was surely walking home to Moorcroft. He was upset and he was walking away. He even called his friend Matt Miller and told him this. And he's seen on security cameras throughout the towns. So he's walking. And from the sounds of it, covering a lot of ground.
Yeah, there's speaking with some witnesses, everybody has a theory that he may have gotten out at the railroad tracks about 4 blocks away from grandparents' home. And whether he got out at the grandparents' home or the railroad tracks, the way Chance is able to cover ground, watching him walk and meeting up the timeline and matching up with the time on the videos, he is able to cover a lot of ground pretty quickly, which also questions how much did he have to drink? Because through my experience, seeing people and interacting with people that had a lot to drink, they're not covering a lot of ground quickly and they don't know exactly where they're going. And he appeared to know exactly where he wanted to go, which was he wanted to go home to Moorcroft, to his house in Moorcroft. And he was covering a lot of ground to get there.
I asked Ryan, based on his knowledge and research of this case, if the data on the videos that he was seen on throughout the town, if it appears that Chance was headed in the direction of Moorcroft, Wyoming, where Chance was determined to go.
Yes. There was also a lot of question about why he picked a certain route. By doing interviews with people that were close to Chance and his wife Bailey, that was a route they would take to come into town several times when they had gone to the grandparents' house. They would come down Avenue I, which is the main avenue coming in from the north from where he lived. and going down Five Rocks Road. And then if you want to avoid all the stop and go traffic or even all the stop signs and get across town quickly, you would take Stable Club Road down to Avenue 10 or Avenue 7 to get down back to the grandparents' house. You avoid about 30 stop signs doing that. So he knew his route. He knew which way he was going. And based on the videos and some witnesses, he was heading exactly where he wanted to go. And where he told his friend, Matt Miller, probably his best friend, where he was going, it matches up.
And we will get into the texts and calls made by Chance that evening later on in the season. Phone data is now a huge part of investigations and can provide investigators with clues about activity, circle of friends, last known contacts, and even location. I asked Ryan if we know exactly where Chance's phone last pinged.
Not exactly. So to quote one of the law enforcement officers that's been on this case since the very beginning, he's high in the chain of command and very dedicated to Chance's disappearance and finding out what happened to Chance. The phone pings and the phone data has been very disappointing. From what I understand, and this is my experience with triangulating phone pings and phone towers, is you need to have a minimum of 2 towers pinging your phone to get a triangulation. It'd be great to have at least 3 pings for a better direction and distance from where that phone is located. With Chance, they were getting 1 ping off of 1 tower. So what that did was that created an arc, and the arc was about a mile long and so deep from the tower. That tower was located at a different golf course, which caused a lot of confusion between the golf courses. River's Edge Golf Course, and that ping actually gave an arc, and that arc would be from where the park properties began on Owl Road in that area, and the arc would go all the way up to the WTT truck stop and a little bit past that. Because of that arc, they weren't able to get an exact location of where the phone last pinged. They just had a large area to work on where Chance's phone was at.
To get a better understanding of the area of that arc Ryan mentioned, I asked just how big of an area we're talking about here.
So I don't have the phone data. The only people that have the phone data obviously is law enforcement. What limited amount of sharing they have done with people, including family members, is that arc is probably a mile to a mile and a half long and possibly up to a half mile wide.
Just as the storm is cooling down from whatever happened that caused Chance to want to walk all the way home to Moorcroft, Wyoming from Gering, Nebraska, another storm, a storm that was said to be the worst storm the area had seen in some time, lets loose right about the time Chance's phone turns off. I asked Ryan what he knows about the storm that happened that evening and if he thinks that it played a part in Chance's disappearance.
Oh, absolutely. The storm had something to do with Chance's disappearance. And in several ways did it have something to do with Chance disappearing that night. Number one, according to some witnesses that were there for the storm and some video that was captured during the storm, the only thing worse than that storm would actually be a tornado. The amount of wind and rain and hail that came from that storm, the next step up would be a tornado actually touching ground. And then watching the data from some of the known sites that captured the data from that day for the storms, with when the storm was starting and it began until it ended, matches up with the possible catastrophic failure of the phone.
What is a catastrophic failure? To be honest, I never heard that term before looking into Chance's case, but I wanted to take a moment to describe what that means since we're talking about it and to give everybody an idea of what a catastrophic failure means for a phone. I'm no expert on catastrophic failures in phones. However, with a little research, I found some information. A phone experiences a catastrophic failure when damage is so severe that the device becomes unusable and is often unrepairable. These failures are often most caused by physical trauma, liquid damage, or battery faults that result in the complete destruction of key internal components. So we're not talking about, dropping your phone or a crack on the screen. This is severe, extreme force, like a car running over a phone or smashing it or bending a phone in half. These can all cause irreparable damage to the motherboard and internal circuitry, causing a catastrophic failure. In terms of liquid damage, we're not talking about a splash of water on your phone, as that might not be fatal to your phone with newer water-resistant phones. But we're talking about enough liquid just saturating the phone, getting into all the components in the device, causing immediate short circuits in the electrical components. And this also causes irreversible damage. Other causes are from extreme high heat or excessive sustained heat, puncturing the battery, overcharging a phone, and in rare cases, manufacturing defects. And the reason why these are catastrophic is because the motherboard gets damaged. Now, the motherboard is the central nervous system of a phone, connecting all of its critical components. And damage to the motherboard is often difficult and expensive to repair, making it more practical to just replace the entire device.
The phone did suffer a catastrophic failure. We're estimating between 9:10 and 9:15 p.m. that night. We don't know if the catastrophic failure was from being submerged in water, which would be near the North Platte River, or some ponds in the area, or did it suffer catastrophic failure because there was so much water from the storm? So was it submerged, or was it just being drenched out in the open and not protected during the storm? Also, based on the timeline and how quickly Chance was walking, we believe that Chance was in an area where he may not have been able to seek shelter as soon as the storm hit. According to a witness at a store, Big Bats, that believes he did see Chance that night, the storm had already started by the time Chance had gone into Big Bats. His shirt was already wet, but it wasn't so bad that he stated that his jeans weren't wet. He just noticed the top of his shoulders were wet. So that would mean when Chance told the clerk that he was heading home now, and actually the clerk witnessed him to start walking back south again, that would put him probably around the Stable Club, Five Rocks Junction, also those railroad tracks about the time the storm hit, when it hit with its full capacity and might.
So here we learn that Chance was seen by a clerk at the Big Bat store, a Sinclair gas station in Scottsbluff, Nebraska, with the top of his shirt being wet, but not his jeans, indicating the storm hasn't really kicked in yet, not to its full force, but some rain beginning to fall.
Yep, we looked into the statements made by the store clerk that he saw Chance that night. Doesn't recall the name on the ID, but at the time they were IDing anybody who purchased tobacco or alcohol at the time of this store, due to some prior issues with the store selling tobacco and alcohol. And that's when he noticed that Chance was from South Dakota, or who he believes to be Chance from South Dakota. Plus the statement made by Chance that the reason he was out in the storm was he just got into an argument with his wife. He's cooled off and he's ready to head home now.
So we have that clerk who interacted with Chance just before the storm kicks into high gear, just before Chance goes missing, actually saying that Chance told him he got into an argument with his wife. However, he's cooled off now and headed back. And the clerk says he saw Chance headed back south. So Chance was actually headed back. And if he was cooled down and headed back, this would take him back south on Five Rocks Road. So he heads back out into the storm, and something else mysterious happens, according to several witnesses.
About maybe 9 months ago, my time might be off, Dawn received a call from somebody. They want to remain anonymous because of some of the drama that's been around town, far-fetched rumors and everything. But over these years, it was just really bugging this person that they had some information and they felt like they really needed to share it. And what had happened was they were outside their home and heard some yelling. This person, she looks down and she sees two girls running from the railroad track area, from a fence near that railroad track area, and they were running behind a group of homes that have a huge wooden fence behind them. The girls then turned and ran down towards Five Rocks Road, trying to stop traffic, trying to wave down the traffic. At the same time, they were yelling help, but they were far enough away till they couldn't exactly hear what they were yelling, but they were yelling for help. The person that saw this asked her boyfriend, she asked her boyfriend to go down and check on the girls to see if they were okay. He gets in his car and he drives down to try to meet up with them. The girls get to Five Rocks Road and traffic's not stopping for them. According to the witness, there may have been one or two vehicles that drove by and didn't stop. And this is in the middle of the storm. So we don't know if they're yelling because of the storm. We don't know why they're yelling. What's in question is the area that they were in. 5 years before this area and 5 years after this certain area, that's not a place where you go walking. The weeds are tall. There's no traffic. There's no foot traffic. There's no reason for anybody to be in this area. And they've never seen anybody in this area before until this night when they were yelling. So once these two girls, I'll fast forward now, once these two girls get to Five Rocks Road, they start running north. The man in the vehicle that's pulling up to check on them, once the girls get to the overpass of the railroad, he thinks they're probably going to stop under the railroad where they're protected from the rain and the wind. And they don't. They keep running, keep going northbound until they get to the old used car dealership right there at the corner of Stable Club and Five Rocks. Once they get there, a small two-door truck pulling a metal boat, described as being metal and possibly only holding maybe 2 or 3 people max, not a big boat at all, on a white trailer, pulls up next to the girls, and the girls go around to the passenger seat, and they're speaking to the driver of the truck. And according to the witness, he believes that the way they were speaking, that they know who the driver of the truck is. After they speak to the driver very quickly, 5 or 10 seconds, they actually climb into the truck. And then the truck pulling the trailer, he doesn't recall exactly if the truck and trailer went across Five Rocks and parked on Owl Road, or if the truck went up and did a U-turn and started heading back south again on Five Rocks. It's his belief that the truck did start heading southbound on Five Rocks, however, stopped right there on the dirt road of Owl Road. So the time that this would have happened, those girls being in that area with the truck and the trailer pulling the boat, would be almost identical to within 5 to 10 minutes of Chance's phone having a catastrophic failure in that area, that almost exact area, probably within 100 or 200 feet of Five Rocks and Owl Road. Then we have other witnesses. We have witnesses that during the storm was traveling westbound on Stable Club Road and actually saw, and this is the description she provided, she said, I saw a truck parked on Five Rocks Road and there was a car parked right up on its bumper. What was unique about this car and truck is she says, I've never seen a car and truck parked there before, and this is the way I always go home. And what I saw was the car did not have its headlights on, but it had its taillights on, and the truck had its headlights on and taillights on. And she said that the car was parked right up on the bumper of the truck. So further questioning, was the storm real bad? And she said it was so bad I had to stay parked at the junction of Five Rocks Road and Stable Club before I could turn out, because I could barely see 30, 40 feet away from me because of how bad the storm was. Based on what she saw, we believe she wasn't seeing a car parked right up on the bumper of a truck. We believe that she was seeing the boat trailer, which would not have any headlights, but would have taillights, parked right up on the bumper of the truck. Also, we have a lady that used to live in the community right where those girls were running that did hear the girls yelling that night. She believed that possibly the girls were yelling because of the bad storm. She didn't go to investigate. She didn't look out her window. Didn't need to. All she knows is she did hear those two girls yelling. And then also we have a fourth witness that saw some traffic on Five Rocks Road southbound that said that because of the storm, she could see a truck and a car that appeared to be racing with the truck down Five Rocks. And when I asked her to describe why she thought they were racing during the storm, she said that the truck or the car was right on the bumper of the truck the entire way down the road. Again, what we think she was seeing the truck and the trailer. And she's a witness to this because she actually saw the WTT video, the WTT truck stop. She saw the video and saw what she believed was to be the drag race southbound on Five Rocks Road. So what we have two girls yelling and screaming, being in an area of Terrytown and Gering that nobody ever walks around, nobody goes to. When I walked the area, I didn't even see trash on the ground in that area because there was nobody uses that. There's no trails. The weeds are too high. You're not going to go in there. Then we see this truck and trailer with multiple witnesses. We have them parking on Owl Road. And then this being at almost the exact time that Chance would have been in that area based on how he was walking and traveling, along with the catastrophic failure of the phone from what we believe to be water damage. That would put that about 98% sure that the situation involving the two girls with the man driving the truck and trailer and Chance's disappearance, about 98% sure they're all linked and in that area.
Who were those two girls heard and seen screaming for help? What were they doing out there where no one else ever seems to be? And why were they screaming for help? Was it the storm or was it something else? And who was the guy in the truck pulling the boat, also observed by witnesses, who picked up those two girls? And what did they say to him? Their statements could help provide insight into this case. It's certainly interesting that all these events seem to line up at about the same time and same place around where Chance was last seen, where his phone shuts off from a catastrophic failure.
Me and some people that really care about Chance. Obviously, there's a lot of people out there that care about him. Nobody more than his parents and brothers, and like his sister-in-law and his cousins and everything, and his aunts and uncles. They all deeply care about him. But some of us volunteers that also care about what happened to Chance. We sent out probably 300 letters to everybody in the community around that area, to all the homes. We did hear back from 3 people. 3 of them stated that they've lived in that neighborhood for a long time and they know those 2 girls are not from that neighborhood. And those 2 girls have never been seen in that neighborhood, according to the description of them. So one thing that they did tell me was, in this little neighborhood that we're in, if somebody was walking down the middle of the road, brushing their teeth, somebody would see it.
Mm-hmm.
And if 2 or 3 years later, I put out some information and I said, hey, I'm looking for somebody who might have been walking down the middle of the road, brushing their teeth, I'd have 4 to 5, maybe 6 people come forward and say, I know exactly who was walking down the middle of the road, brushing their teeth. However, we have 2 girls in a storm being picked up by a truck, and they were screaming. And according to witnesses, screaming at the top of their lungs, yelling for help. Nobody has come forward to identify the 2 girls. So what we ask is, if you know who these 2 girls are, or if you are these 2 girls, just come forward and meet with us and put our minds at ease, or tell us what you saw that night. We'd really like to know what happened and why you were out there that night. What did you see that scared you to where you felt like you needed to ask for help? And then why would you park on Owl Road that night?
So what happened to Chance? He was clearly upset, and there was clearly some sort of argument or disagreement that caused Chance to want to walk all the way to Moorcroft, Wyoming, from where they had been staying at his wife's grandparents' house in Gering, Nebraska. Whatever the situation was, it seemed like Chance was cooling down. And this was in the middle of a storm, a really bad storm. So bad, the only thing worse would have been a tornado touching down. So it makes sense that after a while of walking, realizing a storm was coming, to head back. On the way back, in this storm, what happened to Chance? Was there an accident? Did someone make a bad decision? And does someone, somewhere, know something? I asked Ryan his thoughts about all of this.
My investigations and the way I was raised was you do evidence-based investigations. Of course, sometimes you get a gut instinct on something, but what you do is you look at the totality of all the evidence and you let the evidence guide your investigation and give you the proper conclusion. Based on the witnesses, the interviews I've done, based on what limited information law enforcement has released, I do believe Chance went missing right there in the Owl Road, 5 Rocks, or Avenue I area. I don't believe, based on videos of him walking and the witnesses that seen him, I don't believe that he just decided to fall in the river or go for a swim in the middle of a storm. I believe that there were other people involved, and whether they knew they hit Chance or whether they not, somebody caused physical harm to Chance in that area. And because of that, Chance eventually succumbed to his injuries, whether it was those injuries or he was injured to the point to where he didn't know what he was doing or where he was going, and he ended up in the North Platte River. There is a possibility he went into the North Platte River. Speaking with several experts regarding that river, it is a silt river. If anybody falls into that river, if it's not strong enough at the time to take them downstream, which most of the time it's not, even when it's flooding, most of the time it's not enough to push somebody downstream. The silt will do a thing called entombing. And what it'll do is it'll start to cover whatever's down there. So if you throw a log or a rock in the river, the silt will eventually cover it over and do something called entombing and totally encase and enclose whatever's in that river. One witness told me he was kayaking the river when it was a little high, and a deer that had been either injured or shot, doesn't know, eventually ended up in the river in front of him while he was kayaking. The deer obviously passed away, after being in the river. And he said, well, when I'm done kayaking, I'm going to come back and I'm going to, pull the deer from the water. It was about 3, maybe 4 hours later when he got back after pulling his kayak out of the water further downstream. 4 to 5 hours later, after he got back to where the deer was at, the buck, he said you could barely see parts of the tip of the antlers sticking out of the water. That's how quickly somebody or something can be entombed in that river. It's not quicksand or anything like that. It's just the current will cause the silt to entomb somebody or something that's in that water. With that said, on the theory, yes, I am leaning towards he succumbed to his injuries and either fell in the water or was placed under the water. But there's also a good possibility, based on the canines losing their scent, that he was taken somewhere. So that is also a possibility. I believe if somebody did hit him, injuring him, there's a chance that they didn't want to face justice or explain themselves if they had been drinking or anything like that, and decided to take matters in their own hands and take Chance somewhere.
You heard Ryan talk about a scent search conducted, and we will talk more about that in the episodes to come, as well as hearing from family and friends. We need answers. And as Chance's mother, Dawn, says in this clip from chapter 2,
I want people to know we are never giving up. We're not going away. We're going to be in their faces until we find out what happened to him.
we're not going away. So please, if you do know something, it's time. If you know who those girls are, or if you are one of those girls, it's time. If you're the guy in that truck that picked up those girls, it's time. And if anyone knows who those girls are, or who that guy is in the truck pulling that boat, it's time. People talk, and someone knows something. And even if it is just a situation where the girls were screaming for help to get out of the storm, then just come forward and say that. Sometimes we don't know what information can be helpful. So anything that anyone has out there regarding Chance's disappearance, in regards to that day, July 6, 2019, and that area, please come forward. Thank you for listening to Chapter 1, Rider in the Storm. In Chapter 2, The Heart of a Cowboy, we're going to explore further the life of Chance Englebert, and we'll talk with people who knew and loved him. Here's a clip from Chapter 2, The Heart of a Cowboy.
He had things mapped out. He wanted to get in at the coal mines and then be able to spend his weekends and days off here back at the ranch. And this was his home, and he loved it here. And he should be here with us right now.
Remember, this podcast is a mission, and I want to thank you for being a part of it. And together, we can keep a light on for Chance Englebert. So like this podcast, share it with a friend, and subscribe to wherever you like to listen to podcasts. You can head to the podcast Facebook page, which is Keeping the Light On, Nebraska's Missing Persons Podcast. And you can also go to the official Facebook page created by family and friends called Help Find Chance Englebert. You can show support there as well. And again, you never know. A share here, a follow there, a subscribe there. The more awareness that we can bring to Chance Englebert and support his family and friends, the better our chances are of bringing him home. And that's what this ultimately is all about. Keeping the Light On, Nebraska's Missing Persons Podcast, is created, produced, and edited by me, Josh Kangley. Sources used are hours of interviews conducted by myself and public source material. Thank you for listening. Thank you for helping me keep the light on. Keeping the Light On, Nebraska's Missing Persons Podcast, is a Guiding Lights Network podcast, hosted by Josh Kangley.
I want people to know we are never giving up. We're not going away. We're going to be in their faces until we find out what happened to him.
If you know anything, it's time. If you know anything, it is time to speak out. It is time to say something. In each of my podcasts, in the show notes, there's going to be information to where you can go if you know anything. If it's something you remember, if it's something that you might think is not important, it might be. Sometimes the smallest things break cases wide open.